Thanks for listening to Creative Control. While I have you here, please consider supporting Youth Empowerment and Support Services, otherwise known as YES. Based in Edmonton, Alberta, YES provides immediate and low-barrier overnight and day shelter, temporary supportive housing, and individualized wraparound supports for young people aged 15 to 24. They work collaboratively within a network of care focused on the prevention of youth homelessness by providing youth with the necessary supports to stabilize their housing, improve their well-being, build life skills, connect with community, and avoid re-entry into homelessness. Learn more about how to donate or otherwise support YES by visiting yess.org.
Hi, I'm Jed Bodwin, and I live in Wichita, Kansas. I am a Patreon supporter for Creative Control. I discovered Creative Control some years ago, I think maybe while looking for interviews with Tommy Stinson of The Replacements. And I stumbled across this conversation that Vish had with Tommy Stinson that was really insightful. Vish held his own. I think Tommy can be a little bit of a difficult interview at times. And it went really well, and it really got into some areas that I wasn't expecting. And I thought, gosh, I have to listen to more of this guy and his podcast. Yeah, sometimes I'm not necessarily a fan of the music or musicians that Vish will have on the show, but I always appreciate their creative process a little bit more, and more times than not, though, it does lead me to finding a new musical artist that I'm interested in, or to think a little bit differently about maybe some artists whose work I've overlooked. So, go ahead, and if you've been waiting at all to support Vish and Creative Control, now is probably the best time to do it. I know as a public radio employee here in Kansas, listener-supported broadcasting, whether it's podcasts or radio itself, really isn't a thing of the past. It's actually very much a thing of both the present and the future. So, yay Vish, yay Creative Control.
To make your flexible monthly donation to Creative Control, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control today.
Mike Watt and David Pajo are respected and influential musicians, songwriters, producers, and singers who each live in the state of California. A pioneering figure in the punk movement, Watt hails from San Pedro, California, and has played the bass and sang in Minutemen, Dose, Firehose, Banyan, and Big Walnuts Yonder, among others. He's released wonderful solo records, and he was in the 21st century version of The Stooges. He has also hosted the Watt from Pedro show for more than 20 years, which you can access at twfps.com. Once a resident of Louisville, Kentucky, Pajo is a gifted guitarist and founding member of the band Slint, and has also played in Tortoise, Swan, Gang of Four, Yeah Yeah Yeahs, and The Four Carnation, and released his own music under names like Ariel M, Pajo, M, and Papa M. On May 19th, 2024, Red Parakeet Records released a new single in their 1-for-1 split 7-inch series, in which Watt interpreted the Papa M song, Long May You Burn, and Papa M interpreted the Watt song, Fireman Hurley. As such, Watt and David connected with me for a talk about this unique project and their history together as mutual admirers and friends, how punks shared helpful information, the vaudeville circuit, the Beatles and arena rock, Jay Mascis and the Breeders, David's work in Gang of Four, and a forthcoming project between him, Watt, and Gang of Four's Hugo Burnham, the brilliance and resourcefulness of George Hurley, a musical project that Watt and I are working on together, other future plans, and much more. A technical note that due to a misunderstanding, there was some unusual glitchiness in capturing this episode that I tried to head off at the pass by asking Watt and David to set up a different way of recording everything when we connected this call. As you'll hear, Watt, he doesn't tolerate any bullshit, and he was a little sore with me about this initially. And we also still lost a very small section of David's response early on to me just asking him, how things are going, and him describing a trip he was planning to take to Japan with his son, which you'll hear us discussing sort of midstream. Otherwise, everything worked out fine. It sounds fine. Just a little heads up about these abnormal issues for this show. It's never happened on this show before, so I just wanted to say I'm sorry. But everything's fine. A part of the Entertainment One network with the support of listeners like you who follow and subscribe to this listener-supported and donor-driven podcast. Spread the word about it. Leave nice reviews and ratings on your podcast platforms if you can. And make flexible monthly donations at patreon.com/creative control, which is the primary and most reliable way for podcasters just like me to make a living these days. Any amount is welcome, but a $6 subscription to the Patreon means you can access every single episode of this show in its entirety since we began the Patreon. And that's not the case without that subscription. You can learn more about all of this at patreon.com/creative control. Thanks in advance for your support for me and my work. Plus, in-kind support from independent businesses like Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario. This is episode 872 of Creative Control, featuring the lovely and talented and legendary Mike Watt and David Pajo, with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Hey, Mike, how's it going?
I'm okay, I guess. I don't like bending over, especially for friends. Especially for friends.
I'm sorry I put you through some technological paces before we started rolling. Mike, how are you, really? Is everything okay?
I'm being honest, man.
Yeah.
I don't dig it. I
Yeah.
don't fucking dig it. I'm not going to bullshit you.
I know.
Okay.
That's what I love about you, Mike. I appreciate the no bullshit, but it's lovely, and it's always lovely to speak with you. I just want to say that. It's an honor. Where in the world are you?
Where I live. Pedro.
Pedro, that's nice. Things are going well in Pedro for you today.
No, because I'm being made to shit. I don't want to.
Okay. All right.
Hold on a second, because the volume's way too loud.
I'm so sorry. Nothing makes me sadder than making Mike Watt upset, even a little bit.
Because you would fucking relent, but you're not relenting. Okay, here we go. Now I'm ready.
Okay, it's nice. It's nice to catch up with you, as always, Mike. David, are you there?
I am, yeah.
It's very nice to speak with you again, sir. Where in the world are you?
I'm in Pasadena. Just a drive to Pedro, not too far.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Still going to Japan, and his mom offered to pay for a ticket for my son to go. So it's really I've never even done a road trip with just me and my son. So this is kind of nerve-wracking and exciting at the same time.
That sounds lovely, though. Sorry, how old's your son?
He's 14.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm just my kid is 12, and he just starting to beat me at basketball. It's really frustrating. Like, he's legitimately beating me. It's not good.
Oh yeah, my son's taller than me, which isn't really saying much, but he's also like stronger than me, and has a deeper voice. And,
Well, it happens. This is what happens when you have kids. Well, it's nice to have you both here. I'm excited to talk to you each about this brilliant split 7-inch series. I want to begin by asking how you first heard of each other before you met or anything like that, because you're both prominent musicians. David, let's start with you. When did you first hear of Watt?
Oh man, it must have been around 83 or 84. I think it was 84 when I got turned on to Minutemen, and was instantly knew every member of the band and obsessed. That's kind of the way it was back then. Like every single punk band you're into, you knew every member, and Watt's bass playing, of course, was unsurpassed into this day. So yeah, it was through the Minutemen that I heard about them, and I got to see them. I guess it must have been the Three-Way Tie for Less tour, just at the tail end. And I'm so glad, because I still think of that show all the time.
Oh, that's amazing that you got to see that. That's wonderful. Watt, similar question. When did you first hear of David?
Slint. Yeah, Louisville, You know, that you read the fanzines. And,
Yeah, that must have been late 80s, mid 80s.
well, there was no three-way tie. You might mean the co-conspirator tour.
Oh, what was it? Project Mersh, maybe? Or there was no three-way tie for last tour. Okay.
No, it came out a week after he was killed.
Ah, of course.
So you heard tell of Slint. Did you end up hearing their records there, Watt?
I was very much into the movement, so I was curious always about what was coming out.
Yeah.
And, you know, going back to the Hollywood scene in the 70s and start touring, and also scenes happen in other towns around the country.
Yeah.
And by that time, we were really touring a lot, so yeah, I was curious.
Nice. So do you have any recall of when you first met David or began corresponding there, Mike?
Was it? I think it was Lance's 50th birthday party, right?
We played together up on Fairfax at the old silent movie trip for Lance Bang's 50 birthday party.
Oh, okay.
And he had his drummer man, Britt from Slint.
Yeah, that was incredible. That was a dream come true for me.
They came down to Pedro and they practiced in my prac pad.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Sorry, what year is that roughly there, David?
Oh, man. I'm really bad with years. Was it last year? I think, or 2022 maybe?
Oh.
I can't remember.
Okay, so relatively recent. Lance Bangs is... By the way, happy birthday to Lance Bangs. It's belated. I'm sorry. I wasn't invited to the party, but a happy birthday, Lance. That's great. Mike...
It was in September, though. It wasn't in April.
Oh, okay. Okay. So
I think that would make it 7 plus 12, 19 months ago.
19 months ago. Okay, got it. So, sorry, David, that's the first time you ever were in a room with Mike and talked to him?
Well, I mean, other than when I saw them at the Jockey Club.
Oh, yes, right.
I'd seen him play before with other bands too, like the Stooges. But Mike Watt was one of my favorite bass players of all time. And one thing that I remember from seeing the Minutemen was, first of all, they were like the tightest band I'd ever seen. There was like 1 million songs, each song tighter than the last. And at one point, Watt broke a string, changed it during the song, and finished the song. And you have to remember, their songs were literally a minute or less, so it was so incredible, But yeah, that was the first time we have, that we played together and hung out. And it was, oh man, for Britt and I, for sure, it was a dream.
Yeah. Mike, I know you do what you do on stage. Is that a common occurrence for you to potentially break a string and fix it during a song?
In those days, because I'm 66 years old now, and I'm not as strong as when David saw me back then. So I don't, although I did break one when I played with him for Lance.
That's right, yeah.
That was very rare. I haven't done that in years.
Huh.
There was times, especially in the fire hose days, where I would wear a pack of strings in the back of my waistband. I'd break sometimes 3 strings, 4 strings in one night because I was too aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as time went on, I learned how to be better. But by breaking all those strings, I learned how to change them quick.
That's another thing about the Minutemen that I always found impressive is that right away you guys had tour, I don't know what to call them, like hacks they're like rules that I still use to this day. Like I would read every Minutemen interview, and I remember one where I think it was you, Watt, that said, never let your van go under a quarter tank. Just little tips like that, like keeping bass strings in your back pocket, and Hurley tucking his extra sticks in his socks or while he's playing.
Still does that.
Really? Oh man.
I just played with him.
All that stuff are like, I love those kind of tips, and they all work. They're all functional. They're really good.
The old gas tanks were metal, and so they'd get rushed, and we had fuel line clogged a few times where we'd have to disconnect it at the carburetor in the tank, and Georgie'd have to suck, and I'd blow to clear the line. So that's why you didn't go under a fucking quarter tank.
Oh, okay.
Actually, those Econo lines had 2 tanks, so you had to remember to switch. And by the way, they were made, the motors were 351 Windsors. They're assembled in Canada.
Oh, nice.
Well, maybe the motors came from there and they're assembled in Livonia, Ohio. So there's a little Canadian thing. Yeah, but you would learn things that would help you down the, we didn't have an assistant hair tech or shit like that, right?
But I think but you guys were innovative about those things. Like when I saw Hurley with Red Crayola, he had mics that he kept inside of his toms and inside each tom in an XLR in each tom. So he could just...
You still got that. It's a Premier kit.
Wow.
You got it in fire hose. And, some of the pads didn't have the best stuff. And especially with mic stands and stuff, Bogart and all the space and room.
Yeah.
So Georgie really good with... same with Pizzo, my second man organ man. The fabricators, they spend a lot of time in, using their hands.
Mike, David is referring to the instructional aspect of what you did in the Minutemen, how young bands learned. And this is not the first time I've heard this, that particularly in the 80s, people of David's vintage would learn from people like you or Ian Mackay and Minor Threat, like people sharing the experience and the lessons they've learned. Mike, did you have someone like that for the Minutemen where you learned from them ahead of time?
Everybody who fucking tour learned from Black Flag.
Yeah.
Okay, that's talking about our own scene. Actually, the tradition goes back to fucking vaudeville. So we learned shit from them. Like Springtime, do the tour counterclockwise, right? If you're making a big loop around the continent, because you want to get out of the south before it's too sweaty and wait for the north to thaw. And then if it's a fall one, go clockwise so you get out of north before it's too cold, and you wait, you get into the south before it's too sweaty.
Oh man, see, if there was like a handbook of those kind of tips.
Yeah, but I mean, this stuff goes way back. It's older than punk, but Black Flag was actually, you learn by doing. Our first big tour we're in the boat with them, or in the van rather, all 10 of us. So, you know what I mean? It's not even a caravan. We're actually in there with them learning.
Yeah.
I still tour on the same circuit Dukowski kind of created.
Huh. That's remarkable. No, that's great. I appreciate this. Thanks for that insight. I want to ask about this 1-for-1 split 7-inch series. Watt, I believe this is your conception. Where did this idea come from?
No, it's not.
Oh.
Why don't you ask me and I'll tell you, Vish. There's a cat named Joe in Connecticut, and he's put out some stuff of mine. He said, hey, I'm going to start this label, Red Parakeet Records, and I want to do a series called One-on-One. So you pick somebody, and you'll do one of his songs on one side, and then he'll do one of yours on the other side. So I thought of David because I had just done that thing for Lance Bangs with Britt.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I mean, I think it turned out incredible,
Yeah.
Your song, I don't know if I've said this, but you, like, especially your vocal delivery, you really nailed the intent of the lyrics. I didn't even manage to do that on my version. So.
Well, let's talk about that, because David picked one of the 15 parts of my first opera, the one about Georgie.
Mm-hmm.
He's the fireman in the opera. And then I asked him, would you pick one of yours for me? So see, I had the least to do. The label guy and David had more say than Watt did. But when it came to me to come up with my interpretation, I picked Nels Cline, I picked Heather Locke, I picked Lisa Cameron. So that's where my proclivity came in.
It's a beautiful version of David's song. David,
I think when you cover somebody, you shouldn't do a top 40 Xerox rubber stamp cookie cutter. You should try to interpret.
Yeah.
And David already had a good version. And so I thought, how can I do this justice?
Minutemen always did great covers too. I thought, like, have you ever seen The Rain? What was the Van Halen song you guys covered? I forgot.
See, I call them interpretations. I don't call them a cover. Here's an analogy. Tell me if I'm fucked up for saying this. You use a camera and you take a photograph of some kind of scene. Then you ask some cat to use paints to get the same thing. See, one actually is kind of a cover, a copy. The other one's an interpretation.
Yeah, because it always still sounded like you guys. It never sounded like.
Well, I used your same chords. I used your same words. I did the same thing to Daniel Johnston, Walking the Cow. By the way, I got some horrible news a couple days about that tune. This cat in Minneapolis, Phil Harder, made a video for this, and he used his little nephew at the end of it. And the guy committed suicide a couple days ago.
Oh, no.
He's a grown man now. Well, he was.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah. It broke my heart, you know?
Yeah.
But look at all the layers. See, Phil Harder uses my interpretation of Daniel Johnston's original. And same with Daniel Johnston. I used his words, I used his chords, but I didn't want to beat on the organ like he did. So I, had some fun with the rhythm and the
I gotta check that out.
Yeah.
I first did it with Steve Shelley. And Steve Shelley called, for his label, what was it called? Smell Like Records? And it was called The Lucky Sperms. And the other side we did, he wanted to do a Beatles song. And at that time I wasn't, especially when I was a kid, I didn't like Beatles. So I said, well, the only words I liked was Glass Onions. So can we put that with Tomorrow Never Knows? Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Have your thoughts on the Beatles evolved, Mike?
I don't know if they evolved, but they're different.
You appreciate them more?
I think the bass playing is pretty good. I think the drumming is pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think the guitar's pretty good. The singing's pretty good. I like the idea of the cat who wrote the verses was different than the cat who wrote the bridge. And those are things I wasn't let myself be sensitive to because everyone liked him.
Yeah.
You know, it had nothing to do with music. It was just because everybody else liked him. And, like, why I hate that word normal, it just grated on me. But now, I've been more tolerant. Maybe it's an evolution, but maybe I'm more open-minded. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've always been sort of the same way about the Beatles. Like, I just feel we're so oversaturated. Like I feel like I know all the songs and melodies so well just from hearing it in passing that I almost feel like I never need to sit down and listen to them myself.
Especially when I was a kid, I liked bands no one knew, like Blue Oyster Cult or T-Rex.
Yeah, T-Rex.
Because it was, and probably why I was attracted to the movement too. That Germ song, "What We Do Is Secret." I used music as a kind of identity, not to belong, but because the social thing already excluded me. So I used bands that were kind of excluded already.
Sometimes things happen to bands that are out of their control. Like they get popular and they were just doing their thing. I don't know, David, can you relate to that at all? Like, it's you're just doing your thing and either people love it or they don't. And either way, I mean, when it feels oversaturated, people kind of like mad at you because you're popular. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's probably an element of that. I mean, one thing I've noticed is that the bands I've been in, it seems like I leave as soon as they start to get popular. It's almost like it becomes like I understand it anymore, or it's like it's gotten to a level that I can't relate with. Like,
yeah,
I'm used to like the sort of DIY van level of touring, but I appreciate, you know, especially now that I'm older, like I love a bus and a hotel when I'm, you know, playing with a bigger band, just because I've slept on enough floors and couches.
yeah, absolutely.
I was never mad at the Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, why waste energy with bullshit like that? I just wanted to be interested in other bands because, you know, it seems like everybody else was into that. But it had nothing personal against those four guys.
Yeah, yeah.
Was there music that you hated? What? Like when you were younger? Because I feel like I hated music more when I was younger. And now I'm...
Well, what happened with me was when I found out about clubs, I really hated arena rock.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like the way it was presented. It was too far away. They were too tiny. The sound was shitty.
Yeah.
And with clubs, there was also a social thing. I could talk to people. Arena rock, you know, everybody's sitting in the dark and fucked up.
Yeah, it didn't seem like back then there was any differentiation between band and audience. Like, you know, we were all equal.
Yeah, I liked the club thing. I didn't know about them until the movement. You know, I just thought all my music up to that time live was in these big fucking auditoriums or arenas, and it was lame.
Do you remember who some of the earliest bands or artists you got to see were, Mike?
My first gig was T-Rex.
Ah.
I was 15 years old in 1973. T. Boone's Pop took me and him.
Huh.
Damn.
The Long Beach Auditorium. I went to the first California Jam. I took the bus there. Cost $2. Cost $6.50 to go to the show. T-Rex was $2.50. I mean, these things were econo because the record companies were using the gigs as promotion. It wasn't really an industry unto itself yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And David, what about you? You mentioned seeing the Minutemen in a smaller room. Do you remember when you started seeing bigger stuff and who that might have been?
I mean, I had the same kind of experience where when I thought of live shows, it was only arena rock, you know, like, yeah, just whatever band was on the radio would play a big place. And I guess once I found out about punk rock or whatever, and I was immediately attracted to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it mostly, I mean, in Kentucky, I feel like most of the best shows I saw were at parties, you know, like just house parties.
That's that intimacy, that social thing that Mike was just talking about, I'm guessing. Like, it's small.
Yeah. And it seemed like I could comprehend that, but like a huge arena rock show where you're distant. The most you can do to get involved is to hold up your lighter, you know, like,
yeah,
it was, yeah, that felt right to me once, you know, once I started going to punk shows and stuff.
Yeah.
Here I'm trying to learn bass, and you can't fucking hear bass in those arenas and shit. It was terrible. Drums too. You know, it's just that kind of thing. And then it was so impersonal. The only thing is the cat you went to the gig with. So you never met outsiders. And when I went up to Hollywood punk gigs, it was right after high school, 77, graduated in 76. So I start meeting people that I didn't, you know, go to high school with.
Mm-hmm.
That was a trip.
I mean, that was the first time I felt like accepted by a community or I guess, even though it was tiny, you know, like I felt like they were all freaks like me. And like the metalheads, like I like hard rock and all that kind of stuff, but they didn't have a sense of humor. It seemed like, you know, they're like the punk guys had a sense of humor that I could relate with, and just a go for it kind of attitude that I also shared. So yeah, it felt like a dysfunctional family once I started going to punk shows, and yeah, you know, in the best way.
That's an interesting distinction. I think some of these mainstream big rock stars take themselves too seriously, while the punks, I think, are more intense, but have a better sense of humor. Is that kind of where you're coming from there, David?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they could make fun of themselves and things around them, but you wouldn't see like, I don't know. It was like rare to see, you know, Alice Cooper do something funny, or Aerosmith, you know, like do something with a sense of humor.
Yeah. Mike just referred to the fact that he was playing bass and it was hard to hear it in these arenas. Was there anyone you saw, David, that compelled you to think, I want to do that? Like, do you remember what your sense memory of that was? Like, who got you into, like, I want to try to do that too?
Oh, I think, I mean, once I started getting into rock, I wanted to do it right away. It wasn't like one artist, but maybe when I saw Van Halen, I remember I didn't think I want to do that. I guess I just wanted to learn from it, you know. I wanted to learn as much as I could.
Yeah, I wasn't coming from the music thing. Okay, the bass happened because D. Boone's ma wanted me to play it because she wanted us to have a band. So I got into music to be with D. Boone.
Again, social.
And you were friends already with D. Boone in 70s.
No, it's the first day I go to his house. First day I met him, I took him to my pad. Then the next day I go to his pad, and his ma says, you're going to have a band. And you're going to play. Now, this is how fucking bad it was. I didn't know basses had bigger strings because you're so far away. So I thought they were guitars with 4 strings because that's what it looked like in the pictures. So, you know.
I actually didn't even understand the function of a bass until I heard Gang of Four.
Yeah.
Because they made it really clear, you know, this is the guitar, this is what the bass player is doing. Like, I don't know why. I focused on it.
Well, I had an 8-track of anthology of Cream, so I learned a lot of early stuff from Jack Bruce. Right. But then also I started hearing Motown, you know, it was on the radio big time, and James Jamerson. And then later on with Sly, Larry Graham. And that's where I could hear, also in England, you know, with the hard rock stuff, maybe Geezer Butler and John Entwistle, and you could really hear the bass. So that's where I started learning, but not at the gigs, but on the records.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Those arena rock shows sounded horrible.
Yeah,
forgot about that.
Really fucked up.
Yeah,
and there's we'll talk about social. You know, you'd be watching at a club, the band up there, and you could see, wow, look, Lorna's playing a bass. It's got big string, and the guy behind you, they'd get done and they'd be up on stage, and then you could talk to Lorna or Darby or Pat. There was nothing like that where you could talk to the bands.
Yeah, absolutely. I interrupt this episode of my own show for a brief thank you for hearing my call to support me and my work on Patreon. We have seen a lot of growth in Patreon support over the last little while, which is amazing because that's my primary source of income these days. And I love doing this job that I invented for myself a whole lot. Creative Control is a listener-supported podcast. Do podcasters receive any streaming royalties from podcast platforms? No, not any. Does podcast advertising pay the bills? Not for a show at this scale, no. Do all podcasters get paid by companies for their work like some celebrities do? No, most of us do not. We do this work to support our communities and because we love it. So what's the most reliable source of income for podcasters like me? Crowdfunding platforms like Patreon. So if you love Creative Control with Vishkana and want to see it continue, please see the notes in this episode. Click on the link that takes you to my Patreon and its different donation tiers with various incentives and benefits, and support me and my work today. Thank you again so much. Before we leave this alone, David, you just referenced Gang of Four, and what are the odds that someone who was shaped or whatever inspired by a band gets to play in the band? I haven't talked to you since that happened. I'm just looking at that box set that came out. It's just above me here. Real quick there, David, what was that experience like for you to get to actually play in Gang of Four?
Oh man, I feel like the past couple of years have been Pinch Me, I'm Dreaming kind of years, like between playing with Watt and Gang of Four. It's
Well, I got to help the Stooges for 10.5 years.
Absolutely. I was going to say,
we wouldn't even have a movement without that fucking band.
Yeah.
Totally. It all goes back to the Stooges.
Yeah.
I got to play on a pop group song, but not live. I got to record with the singer Mark Stewart, before he passed away. So it is a trippy when you meet or you get to work and learn from your heroes. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just Iggy's birthday, so shout out to Iggy. Happy birthday, Iggy.
It was 2 days ago. He turned 77.
Yeah. Amazing. Speaking of pinch me moments, I still can't believe Iggy Pop was on this show. It's unbelievable. I love Iggy Pop, and it's amazing. It's amazing how we're all kind of connected by punk and the people we get to meet. I want to go back to what Mike was saying about how these songs were selected. David, why did you decide to suggest to Mike to play Long May You Burn? Do you remember?
I just, for some reason, I just thought it would be a good song, mostly because like the chord progression and everything about it is pretty traditional. I just thought it would be a good template, or like a good starting off point for him to go any direction with it. That's kind of it. And plus I thought it was a song that I had that I always liked, but it sort of got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah. Do you have any memory of what might have inspired you to write the song? Because Mike covered it, I revisited your version. I was reading the lyrics. They're really beautiful. And I don't know how you feel about it. I'm sure it's the same. Mike's version is so lovely. Mike and the people who made it, I mean, it's just beautiful. But going back to the original song, do you have any memory of what maybe brought this song about?
I do. I don't know how much I want to talk about it, but it's funny you say that, because it does come off as like beautiful words, but I meant the words and like purely spiteful. Like Long May You Burn meant like I want you to burn in hell.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like Watt's attitude when he delivered those lyrics, like he had that, like he nailed the vibe that I couldn't do. But that was it. And
you know who I was thinking of, David? Leonard Cohen.
Yes, I'm a huge Leonard Cohen fan.
That's the kind of place I was coming from. So thank you again, Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting, Mike. So do you mean in your vocal delivery as much as anything else, or the arrangement?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
For the music, I used Heather Lockie, Nels Cline, and Lisa Cameron. And when I do that, see, this is the way I do being a bass player. I don't ever realize how the song's going to turn out. I bring them the bass naked like that as a launch pad, as a springboard, and see what they're going to make of that. And then when I heard that, I just thought David really meant what he wrote there. Yeah. And so I wanted to make it like I was whispering it right in your fucking ear.
Yeah.
Super haunting. It's really beautiful. Mike, this might be a question that makes you upset. Do you have any kind of distinction in terms of your relationship with a song, in terms of reading the lyrics off a page and hearing it? Like, this is an interesting exercise you got to get up to, right? You got to interpret this song. Did you spend time reading it, reading the words as much as you did listening to David's original version?
I didn't have to read. I could hear him. He was very clear in singing.
Yeah. Okay. I guess where I'm coming from is sometimes when I read words off a page, they impact me differently than just hearing them. Do you have that at all?
Well, here's the way I look at that. Lyrics are words that go to some kind of musical rhythm, right? And poetry, the words themselves have to be their own rhythm.
Yeah.
Their own, kind of music, right? Mm-hmm. So if I listen to them separate, it's more like poetry. So I wanted to hear it as music, a song, with the instruments, because I wasn't just going to recite this thing. I was going to play with other people. By the way, all the stuff came via the internet. I was never in the room with any of those people.
Oh, wow. I didn't
One came from upstate New York. One came from Austin, Texas. One came from Echo Park. See, the internet don't have to be for just spreading lies and hate. It can also do collabs, facilitations. So that's the way I saw it. I saw it, Vish, I saw it as the O word opportunity and not the B word burden. I thought, man, this is a place to give David an interpretation of his work and get to collab with some of my musical compadres.
Yeah. Mike, I've referred to a project you and I are immersed in that's very internet-based, long-distance collaboration. Are you doing more such things in this time?
I've been doing them since about 2005. Actually, this goes back before internet. Do you know about Dose?
I don't think I know what that refers
Dose is
to.
a band. It's my first side band. It started in the last few months of the Minuteman.
Oh,
it's
right.
just two basses, me and Kay. And when we made the first album, she had to do this internship in Yale after she graduated UCLA. So we both got the same kind of 4-track machine and traded cassettes through the U.S. mail.
Wow.
So it's the same fucking concept, right?
Yeah.
See, I never would have thought of that either. And I had a 4-track growing up. Like it's
Look, here's an example, David. The Chariot's 6,000 years old, 2 wheels. Bicycle's only about 300 years old, 2 wheels. What's the big difference? They added an axle.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
Thousands of years to fucking think of another axle. It's just,
oh
you know,
wow, never,
there's
yeah.
a pop group song where Mark Stewart said, "The way out is through the door. How come no one ever uses it?"
Yeah.
Right? And the other side of that, the Slits, what's her name, Ari? She says silence is a rhythm too. See, it's the way things are applied. Sometimes stuff is not invented. It's just another way of using.
Yeah, and musicians figure out a way. I had the, last year, I think it was, I had the Breeders on talking about how they wanted to have Jay Mascis play guitar on one of their songs on their album Last Splash. So they sent him reel-to-reel tape, and Jay got it and apparently misunderstood the assignment and sang on the song.
I was there when that happened.
Oh, you were?
They wouldn't let it come out. This is like from 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're finally going to let it come out. The Little Hammer, or there's a song about a little hammer.
Divine
And
Hammer.
I thought it was great, and they wouldn't let go of their ego, but I guess they are now. That's great.
Well, I asked Jay when he was on the show this year about it, and he has no memory of that. He just said, I don't know, they sent me the... All I'm getting at it, David, is, people
He
send
played
in...
it for me, and I said, man, why won't they let this come out?
Everyone's
But
mellowing
like
out.
the Orson Welles thing, no wine before it's time.
Mike, similar question to what I asked David about. The origin of your wonderful song, Fireman Hurley, from your album, Contemplating the Engine Room.
It's not really a song. It's a part of this one big song.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you elaborate upon that for those who may not be familiar with that record?
It's my first opera. It's called Contemplating the Engine Room, and it was finally me getting around with dealing with losing people. Like D. Boone getting killed, my pop getting killed, marriage over. I just wanted to deal with that, and I couldn't do it in a little song, like David was talking about little songs.
Yeah.
You know, we were actually, when I came up with that name for the band, it was 2 words. It was Minute Men. And D. Boone says, nah, make it 1 word. Call it Minute. Because I was making fun of arena rock. But if you understand, my father was a machinist mate in the Navy. And the basic thing for an engine room, you need a fireman to get the heat up, boiler man to get the water so you can get the steam, and then a machinist mate to get to the screws so you can push the boat. So I used my pop's life in the Navy to try to talk about the Minuteman. So D. Boone was the boiler man, Georgie was the fireman, and I was the machinist mate.
Oh, wow.
And so when we get to that part, I used a lot of things to make that thing because I was so afraid to address those issues. So I use all this analogy and metaphor shit. But I put the whole life of his 20 years in the Navy and us being, our whole thing as a Minuteman in one day, the way Jim Joyce did that with Ulysses. So it starts at the crack of dawn and ends, dusk, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's kind of in the middle. Georgie's kind of in the middle. And, it's trippy the way I made that thing. I didn't tell Nels or Hodge anything about it. I would just play them a part at a time. And then they would just bring what they had based on my explanation. And I wouldn't use music words. I was telling them the story. So you got to give a lot of credit to those cats.
Yeah. It's a wonderfully jaunty song, Fireman Hurley, in particular. Mike, can I ask you about these lyrics? Because they make me smile.
It's about Georgie.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I want to ask you about something specific here. Sailing all these years through the joys and tears still cracks me up when you call me Chowder Pump.
It's about Georgie.
That's about
Georgie. Listen, he's really good at inventing slang. And that was one of his slang words for me. Georgie came up, the shit that people say Pedro speak. Yeah. Nobody talks like that here. Georgie, that's all Georgie. And he's from Brockton, Massachusetts. He came here when he was 5. Georgie's a really creative cat. Yeah. And one time I drank too much bourbon and was puking so hard, the vomit was like clam chowder or some shit. And so Georgie called me like I was a pump, just pumping out this fucking thing. Yeah. So in a way, it's like a documentary, right? Because I got there's 3 characters in this opera, and I got to introduce them. That's what the words are about.
Okay. Mike, who's responsible for using the phrase spiel? Because I use that all the time and I attribute it to you.
No, it goes back to Yiddish.
Well, yes. Yes, I know. Yeah, sorry.
It's showbiz talk. Well, in Germans, Yiddish is German with Hebrew characters. And it's kind of sad it disappeared. Jimmy Cagney could speak Yiddish because Hollywood and all this. In fact, I got it from Georgie because he would use it. We meant it like it's your pitch, your something you really believe in.
Yeah. Yeah, well, whenever
in German, it means game, to play, gamble even.
Yeah. Well, I think of you every time I send an email inviting someone to be on this show because I say, and here's my usual tech logistics spiel. And that word, I use that word because of you, I guess is what I'm saying. And it sounds like I'm using it because of Georgie. So all
and vaudeville, right? Like we were talking about Tord and shit. Yeah. I really see myself as part of traditions, even though I was part of this kind of movement.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff, even the club thing, I helped the Stooges for 10.5 years. Those guys taught me about the 60s was all about little clubs and little bands and little labels. It was just that one period in the 70s where that, what Nuremberg Rally arena rock shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Circumstance.
David, I want to ask you about your own approach to this Watt song. It's like I described it as jaunty. What compelled you to want to tackle this one for this series?
I just really like the words and the guitar melodies that were happening, and the breakdown where I think the bass does it on this original song. Like it does this really really quick sort of ramp up. It just seemed like it had everything I liked in one song, and so I thought that would be a good one to translate into Pajo's spiel.
It's catchy as hell. Poke and stoke your own hope.
Yeah,
poke and stoke and poke.
Well,
it's
Georgie
really catchy.
wrote a song on Double Nickels on a Dime called 2 Beads at the End. And one of his lines was, I feel like a poker in somebody's fireplace. And Fireman, I don't just play with Georgie in Minuteman. I actually play 7.5 years with him after in Fire Hose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's why, in a way, he's the fireman too, because I mixed, like I said, I used a lot of metaphor and analogy
Man, I really want to go back and listen to that album start to finish, knowing this now, because I always feel like that with your lyrics, that they're encoded, and you can find the real heart in it, once you kind of decode it.
Yeah, the unit was the word me and D. Boone had for Georgie's hair. He had that like kind of helicopter blade thing when he played. So I call him a unit man. See, yeah, it's inside information, David. Like, if I let you know about this, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean is like, I know it's not nonsense or poetry. It's like, it all makes sense. There's a logic to it all.
Thank you.
Contemplating the Engine Room, for anyone who hasn't heard it, who's listening to us right now, it's a brilliant album. Just really brilliant. It is a rock opera. And yeah, it meant a lot to me when it came out. I was a kid. I was 19. And, Mike, for what it's worth, your music has always meant the world to me. So this is, and you too, David, obviously. I mean, all the work you've done. It's just nice to chat with both of you. It means a lot to me. So thank you for making this thing. I want to ask you both about kind of what's next for each of you. Mike, you just got back from some touring, and I feel like you're catching up on a lot of projects. What's going on? What's coming up next?
2 weeks, another tour. It's with, I played with these Italian guys since 2008, called El Sogno del Marinaio, and I'm going to do a Europe tour for our third album.
Oh,
and
nice.
Then, in the fall, Joe Baiza and Chris Corsano, some improvised tour. I want to do a tour where there ain't one song, right? You just make up shit every night. I ain't tried that yet. This Porno for Pyro tour was my 70th tour, so I only got 70 more. So I'm going to try some different things. Get this. When Porno for Pyro played about a month ago in Boston, a cat shows up the gig named Hugo. Now, I met Hugo. In fact, I had him come to a Stooges gig in Boston years ago. He's a drummer, Gang of Four, and he wanted to do a trio with David because he plays with them in that other band.
Oh, cool. So
in fact, it was supposed to be this week, but he's also a professor and couldn't get out of school obligations.
I see. Okay. So you're keeping busy as always, Mike. That's what I'm hearing. And you got your show. You got your radio show as well.
I did one yesterday with David J. I'm going to do one about an hour and a half with Talia Zedek.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
And then there's one tomorrow with somebody I ain't met before named Lynn Dury. But
yeah. David, similar questions. What's coming up next for you? What are you working on?
I just finished a solo record, new PopEp record, and I recorded and mixed it all without turning on my computer once, which I was really proud about. And I played all the instruments, But so that hopefully will come out at the end of the year, and I want to do like a full band tour with that. And then Gang of Four will do more stuff next year. And what else? Oh, yeah, and this thing with Hugo and Watt is going to be super cool once he comes out here to join us. Yeah, I'm really excited about that.
Oh, that sounds incredible. Good for you. That's great. I'm happy to hear that.
You know what we wanted it to do? I mean, at first I didn't think we were going to get together. I thought it was going to be a remote thing like a lot of these collabs. And we wanted to let the drums come first.
Yeah.
Instead of, that other way that's so fucking typical, right?
Yeah.
This thing about drummers being stupid and they can't write songs, fuck that shit.
Oh, no way. Like, to me, George and Hugo are two of my favorite drummers because they're not, they have chops, but they know how to come up with a beat that fits the song perfectly, like becomes part of the song.
Yeah.
The power of the song. And a lot of drummers they can do all the flash you need, but they can't come up with a beat that gets to the heart of the riff,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what if you start with it so the riff comes after?
Yes. Yeah.
That's my point.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
That's what I'm doing right here with the stuff Vish sent me.
Yeah.
The drums come first. Why not?
Why not?
Just like bass comes first. Non-traditional ways of composing.
Yeah. And that way you don't need a click track or anything either. Like, so you're like actually playing along to a human.
It's pretty funny because some people, when I sent them the stuff Watt and I did, they were like, did you use a click track? And I said, no, I didn't. It's pretty obvious I didn't actually, but no, I didn't. I just improvised completely in the moment and then just sent them to Watt. And then he, I think, has already made them feel like they're stable and they feel good and solid. But yeah, certain colleagues, mutual friends of ours, David, certainly were like, I want to work on this, but is there a click track? I found that interesting that they were hoping for one. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's become...
People always want a shortcut on the truth, and there ain't no shortcuts on the truth.
Well, sorry, I might have missed it in some of the clatter. You're referring, David, to Hugo Burnham of Gang of Four? That's who this is going to be with?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
The trio that's coming up. Yeah, that's the idea. We start with drums and build from there.
That's remarkable.
Huge paths to whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the Proj name.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the name of it. That's what it's going to be called. Oh, interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, they liked it. I proposed it because I used parts of our names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. I hear it now.
Capital, yeah. Huge paths to whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, see, there's a method to the madness. I didn't even know that.
You got to read more Jim Joyce.
Yeah, I probably do.
Or Walt Whitman.
Yeah.
Hugo and Dave Allen in Gang of Four, like one of the greatest rhythm sections ever. Yeah, this is going to be great. I hope this works out. I can't wait to hear this. And that's great. So that's lovely to hear. David, if people
No, the bass player ain't involved. I'm going to be playing the bass.
No, sorry. I just mean Hugo and playing with Dave in Gang of Four had a very unique dynamic as a rhythm section that I never heard before. And I think that's what resonates a lot for people who love Gang of Four. So having Hugo play with Watt and David Pajo, like, I can't even imagine it. That's going to be unbelievable. That's all I'm getting
In
at.
my opinion, John had a big part of it.
Totally.
The singer man. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that whole outfit is unbelievable. Andy Gill, man. Anyway, sorry. Very exciting. I'm excited for you guys.
But we're not going to try to reproduce the Gang of Four. We're going to try to make something. Like I said, by having Hugo go first,
yeah,
hopefully this project gets a voice of its own.
Absolutely.
Like when you cook, you can use common kind of ingredients, but it's which ones and how much of each, you get a different kind of recipe.
Yeah.
And it don't all taste the fucking same.
Well, Hugo and Dave were on the show 3 years ago, and they were lovely guys too. So, David, I'm sure you've had that experience just hanging out with them. They seem lovely.
Oh, yeah. John King came out to Pasadena like a couple months ago just to spend some time here, and we were working on just writing some stuff together. And yeah, like, he's incredible. Like, even like he busted out the keyboards and was adding these parts that I never would have thought of in a million years, but totally make the songs,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he turned 70 next year, and it's also the 45th anniversary of Entertainment when it came out. So they've been in this world for a long time. They know what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, it's great. I'm excited to hear all these things you guys are up to. David, if people want to learn more about you, kind of keep track of your comings and goings online, where would you like to send them?
Oh, gosh. Not Wikipedia or whatever that, like, I don't even know what that says anymore.
Yeah.
But all I have is Instagram. Yeah, I guess that would be it.
Okay, that's cool. I'll link to that. And Mike, similar question. If people want to learn more about what you're up to.
Having your own website is like having your own fanzine. Fanzine ethics. This is what the big thing that clued me in about the movement. Aesthetics are informed by the ethics.
Yeah.
So MikeWatt.com.
Gotcha. Okay. I'll link to those things, like I said. No problem. I want to go out on a song from this split 7-inch, if that's permissible. And if so, I wonder if we can pick this together, but I'm going to defer to you guys on this. Mike, if we can go out on a song from the split 7-inch, which one would you choose?
David's.
I figured that might be the case. David, are you okay with that?
Sure. I personally would rather hear Watt singing than me, but but whatever, whatever Watt thinks is fine with me.
Okay, well, this is
my mother. You can blame my mother, but my middle name is David.
Oh, there you go. You guys are connected.
Yeah, we defeat Goliath.
Exactly. To defeat the Arena Rock Goliaths. Let's go with that, maybe. I don't know where I'm coming from. All right, well, this is a nice thing because, yes, we're going to David's interpretation of a Watt song. This is Fireman Hurley from this wonderful new split 7-inch, which is available now. Mike, David, an honor and a pleasure to speak with you. I hope you had some fun and enjoyed this, and I hope we talk again soon. Best of luck with everything in the future.
Thanks so much. Yeah, thanks for bringing us all together, because I always love to talk to Watt, and thanks for facilitating that.
There you have it. Brand new music by Papa M, Mike Watts, Fireman Hurley. That is from this new split 7-inch that we were talking about there. Thanks again to Watt and David Pajo for appearing on this, the 872nd episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Entertainment One podcast network and is available wherever you get your podcasts. If you can't find an episode you're looking for, if you want to learn more about me and sign up for my monthly newsletter and learn other things too, please visit vishkhanna.com. You can click on that hyperlink text in the show notes that says follow Vish online to find me on social media things. Most significantly, though, I'd ask you to visit patreon.com/creativecontrol to become a subscriber for this show and make a flexible monthly donation to keep it going. $6 or more a month grants you access to every single episode of the show. Every other episode is not available to the general public, I suppose. You just get an excerpt, but every single entire episode is available to anyone who subscribes to the $6 and above tier. And there's other perks in the tiers below as well. At $4, you still get ad-free episodes, just not every single one. At $1 a month, you get access to my weekly newsletter. Anyway, there's lots to see and do and learn about at patreon.com/creativecontrol. So if you can support me and my work, I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much. Speaking of thanks, I want to thank a couple of independent businesses, Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, and Granddad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario, for their in-kind support for this show. I guess that was more than a couple. Thanks, as always, to my friend Jim Guthrie. He makes wonderful music, which you can hear sometimes on the show, and you can learn more about Jim at jimguthrie.org. And finally, thank you so much for listening to this episode with Mike Watt and David Pajo. I hope you found it fascinating and interesting, and I hope you'll check out their new split 7-inch. It's great. Out on Red Parakeet Records, 1-for-1 series. It's an interesting series. I can't wait to hear more of that. And thanks for subscribing to this podcast or following it. And if you can, leave a nice rating or review for it on your pod platform. That helps. And telling, grassroots-wise, just telling your friends about the show, that helps the most. Spread the word about it, that kind of thing. Anyway, yeah, you don't have to do anything. I just appreciate you listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And I will talk to you very soon. Thank you. Bye for now.